Good evening, friends, and a very happy Diwali once again. Today is a new year, and may the divine light bless our thoughts, our actions for the coming year, that they may be in tune with her will. Today's reading and satsang is based on the verse from the Bhagavad Gita, verse 22 of chapter 5, Freedom Through Inner Renunciation. O son of Kunti, because sense pleasures spring from outside the self, they all have a beginning and an end, and bring only misery. No one of any understanding would seek happiness through them. It's wonderful that we have a great scripture like the Gita to guide us in our daily life. Very practical, very powerful solutions in a life of chaos and lack of discipline. So it's wonderful that the advice that is given by Krishna here in this verse, not to rely on the senses for our happiness and pleasures, to go beyond. He says there is a world beyond the senses. And I want to start with a message that Swamiji had given in one of his satsangs, and that made a deep impression on my mind. He said, when we finally find liberation, the only moments we remember are those moments when we made contact with God. And I remember thinking to myself at that time, oh my gosh, then what are we doing in life? Because if we look back at our life and think of all those moments of love or joy or peace, it's worthwhile to ponder how many of those moments are rooted in God. And how many of those are rooted in personal desires? How many of them are rooted in people or circumstances outside us? Yogananda ji said, all of life is given to us for our education and entertainment. But how few are educated and how few are entertained? I think the problem is that we confuse the education for entertainment and the entertainment for education. We mess it up and blame God for it. Master says in the autobiography of a yogi, we wonder how do we then confuse our experiences in this life. Everything that we do in life is one goal, happiness. Everything that we do. But the pursuit of happiness is often misguided, very confused. How do we lose track of our true nature of joy? We keep seeking joy in everything we do because it is our true nature. The soul, having known that bliss, cannot look for anything else but that highest joy that it was already a part of before creation. And so everything that we are trying to experience in this life is a seeking for that joy, for that happiness. I want to bring into focus here, which I often do in the satsangs that I give, but somehow I find it fundamental to my understanding of experiences on this plane, where Yogananda ji explains in the autobiography of a yogi how consciousness, as it takes form, percolates through 4 filters of awareness. Mon, the mind; buddhi, the intellect; ahankar, the ego; and chitta, the feelings. Our mind is often strongly identified with the life force in the senses. And when that happens, the mind, there's a ripple in the calm lake of the mind, which confuses the imagery. And so the buddhi begins to see all these differentiated forms and says, this is a room, this is a tree, this is a sky, this is an animal. And ahankar comes into the picture and says, this is my tree. Chitta says, how beautiful my tree is. It bears so many fruits. It's better than your tree. But if the mind can be withdrawn, if the life force can be withdrawn from the senses, the mind reflects pure spirit asses, buddhi sees undifferentiated light, the ego becomes a pure instrument for the spirit, and the chitta is calm. I want to share the story of grapes. There is the story of this guy in Alaska. His friends one day shipped him these delicious grapes, ladyfinger grapes they're called, and it seems to be from Fresno in California. And he loved the grapes so much that he thought, oh, well, I should leave my job in Alaska and go to Fresno so I can have these grapes all the time. And he gives up his job in Alaska and goes to Fresno. And one day he's invited to his friend's house, and they are chatting, having a conversation, and a lady from the neighborhood drops in. And she comes with a basket of these ladyfinger grapes. And this man couldn't believe his eyes. He was so thrilled, and he told the lady, I left Alaska for these grapes. I'm so grateful that you're bringing these grapes. And the lady was, oh, don't worry. I am the owner of a grape ranch. You can have all the grapes that you want. So the next morning, before the break of dawn, the lady rings the bell. And the man sees the basket of grapes that this lady has brought. He's thrilled. He's happy that he can have a day full of grapes. And that's exactly what happens. Morning, afternoon, evening, he enjoys the grapes. And the next morning, the lady is at the door again. This time, he was a little sleepy, fairly measured enthusiasm. He opens the door and he sees the basket of grapes. The taste of the grapes is still in his mouth. He's looking forward to it. He gratefully takes the basket of grapes from the lady, thanks her politely, and through the day enjoys the grapes. The third day, the lady rings the bell again. This time is a little heavy from all those delicious grapes. They're very delicious, but no more as they were on the first day. But he didn't want to be impolite to the lady, so he thanks her for the basket of grapes, but hints that, I have some left from the previous day. And so, but the lady thinks, he doesn't want to be rude and does not want to impose on my generosity. And she comes back on the fifth day with an even greater quantity of grapes. And the little fellow leaps out of bed like he had seen a ghost when he sees the lady at the door. He says, oh, lady, I have thoroughly enjoyed these grapes, but maybe you want to take these to the market. So it's interesting that all of our sense experiences eventually get us to that point of monotony. And on a subtler level, an estrangement from our true nature. And this gradual estrangement, Yogananda ji he says in the autobiography, is because of man's spiritual unadventurousness. That unadventurousness which ceases to wonder, if this world is so real, why does it cease to exist when I close my eyes? These grapes that I so love, if I'm sleeping and somebody puts these grapes into my mouth, can I taste them? Or this beautiful thing that I love seeing every day, if somebody were to place it in front of my eyes when I sleep, can I enjoy it? Why do we cease to ask of these wonders? Because God gives us those hints of omnipresence every night, that when we sleep, our senses no longer tempt us. They no longer have control over us. Might there be a solution to life's suffering in these moments when God shows us our true nature? The true yogi who has understood the secrets of life knows that if he can withdraw his mind from the senses, he can prevent the senses from having any control over him. And similarly, can we, each one of us, yoga shows us the way. Yoga gives us the techniques, the energization exercises that we did before the satsang today, that teach us to control and direct the flow of energy to any part of our body at will. Can we make these principles practical in our life by applying them? They become practical when we apply them, when we use our willpower to make them real, to take us away from the unreal towards the real. And on this point, I want to lead us to another story. Now, it's wonderful that the story of the grapes compressed so many incarnations into 4 days. But actually, this is the story of millions of incarnations for all of us. So there is this beautiful story in the Jataka tales. And there are a group of monkeys, about 80,000 of them, led by a king. The king is an enlightened one. And so he's leading his nation of monkeys into a deep forest. And before they embark on their journey, he warns them. There are a lot of poisonous fruits and unknown ponds which are haunted by water demons. Do not eat of the fruits or drink of the water in these ponds without asking. And the monkeys go on their journey. And after a few hours of wandering in the forest, they come to a big pond. And they're very thirsty and hungry. But they remembered the king's advice and didn't drink of the water from the pond. They waited for the king. They said, we'll wait for the king. So they sat around in the branches of the trees waiting for the king. The king finally arrived. And he asked them, did you drink of the water? They said, no, sir. We were waiting for you. So the king walks around the bank of the pond, and he notices that there were a set of footprints that went into the pond, but didn't come out of the pond. And he knew that there was a water demon in there. So now the king was a powerful king, an enlightened one, using the power of his mind. Now there were also bamboo shoots all along the bank of the pond. So using the power of his mind, he turns those bamboo shoots into straws, through which the monkeys could then sip water from the pond without being attacked by the demon. And I thought there was a beautiful story herein for us, that if we can ask the Guru, take the help of his will which is guided by wisdom, before we allow ourselves to be enslaved by senses, to be attacked by the senses, we can live a life of peace, of true joy. The Guru is our friend. We know the story of sage Vyasa and the gopis. And that is one of the stories I adore, because it tells us so beautifully how to live in this world, not by rejection. Now, each of these different stories show us different ways of engaging with our senses. The first one tells us you need to taste the real cheese to understand that the stale cheese is really stale. Withdraw your mind from the senses, go within, taste of that inner ecstasy. And in that inner ecstasy, all the lower joys, lesser joys of the senses simply fall away from us. The second story, now it's not easy. We can use our willpower, we may have all the techniques, but millions of incarnations cannot be overcome by our self-effort alone. You need grace. You need the power of a consciousness that is united with the supreme power. And so the power of the Guru to guide us along our journey, like the monkey king, that is the second aspect. The third aspect, it's not about rejection. The senses are a gift given to us by Divine Mother. In fact, they are the instrument through which the soul participates in this dance of creation, in this dance of bliss. How can we enjoy the senses? Like the monkeys, they enjoyed the water, quenched their thirst without being assaulted by the demons. Similarly, and I think I won't repeat the story of sage Vyasa because everybody here knows that story. We know how sage Vyasa enjoys the cheese that was brought for Lord Krishna. And the gopis rush over to the other side of the bank, and they're surprised that Krishna is not waiting there for, every day like he would wait for his cheese. And Krishna says, oh, I've already had my fill today. I'm not hungry. Because the fellow on the other side of the bank fed me too much. And they were surprised, oh, how my Lord, he's on the other side of the bank. How did he feed you? And he said, when he had the cheese, he was thinking of me. So similarly, when we enjoy these gifts of creation, the senses are a gift. Can we enjoy it with the power of God? The Yoga Sutras say that samyama, or perfect attunement with the power behind the senses, helps us to enjoy sensory experiences without recourse to the senses. And we know of the story, disciples often quote of Master himself on the tennis court. They say they would be surprised that Master would be wherever the ball was, no matter how far the ball was hit. How could he be in all places at the same time? So that power behind the senses, which is the intuitional power behind the senses, if we can strengthen our intuition, if we can strengthen our attunement with that power that gives life to the senses, you can enjoy these things of creation without being attached or enslaved by it. There's a beautiful story of Yogananda ji and Dr. Oliver Black, which was shown in the movie. Again, a wonderful story for us to reflect and carry with us, through the day, where Dr. Oliver Black is visiting the ashram at Mount Washington. He would come now and then, and this time when he came, it was pouring rain. And he hears a knock on the door, and a disciple, a brother monk, is standing outside the door with a message from Master and tells him, Master wants you to go for a drive with him. And he looks out and says, it's pouring hard, cats and dogs. Why does Master want to go out on a drive in this heavy weather? But he said the Master knows what he's doing. So he puts on his coat and hat and goes out to the porch. And what does he see? He is stunned. With the sun shining, the ground is not wet. And a little distance away, the Master is standing and tells him, for you, Oliver, that we don't really have to be bound by the senses to enjoy this world. God, in the giving of free will to man, has given him greater powers. If we can use that free will to develop our intuition through regular meditation, through yoga practices, through attunement with the Guru, the options, the solutions are many. But if we can take even one of them, as Master would say, even 1%, if you practice of what I give, you can find freedom. So can we, when we go home, take up at least one of the sensory attachment that is a weakness for us and turn it into our strength? Not to reject it, not to set aside that gift of Divine Mother, but to embrace it with her power and joy flowing through us. And I want to close this satsang with a reading of Yogananda ji's poem, I Was Made for Thee. It also reminds me of a wonderful game Yogananda ji would play with his disciples. He used to call it the intuition game, to help his disciples develop intuition. That he would ask for a specific article, but in his mind he would hold something else. So he would tell his disciples, bring me that harmonium. But he would, in his thoughts, be asking them to bring him a glass of water. And he would test to see if his disciples could intuit that thought and go beyond the senses of hearing through the ears or seeing through the eyes. So it's something that even maybe we can practice. So this poem is called I Was Made for Thee. Let us close our eyes and tune in to the power behind the words in this poem. I was made for thee. I was made for thee alone. I was made for dropping flowers of devotion gently at thy feet on the altar of the morning. My hands were made to serve thee willingly, to remain folded in adoration, waiting for thy coming. And when thou comest, to bathe thy feet with my tears. My voice was made to sing thy glory. My feet were made to seek thy temples everywhere. My eyes were made a chalice to hold thy burning love and the wisdom falling from thy nature's hands. My ears were made to catch the music of thy footsteps echoing through the halls of space, and to hear thy divine melodies flowing through all heart tracks of devotion. My lips were made to breathe forth thy praises and thine intoxicating inspirations. My love was made to throw incandescent searchlight flames to find thee hidden in the forest of my desires. My heart was made to respond to thy call alone. My soul was made to be the channel through which thy love might flow uninterruptedly into all thirsty souls. Om Shanti. Shanti.